You're watching Open Agenda. Here's our host, Joe White.
Welcome to Open Agenda. I'm your host, Joe White. In the studio with me today is Joe Scafino from Salisbury, Mr. Mike Goldberg from Del Mar. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me.
Of course.
So, Mike, just yesterday you were out at the airport and you were able to see the ribbon cutting and the unveiling of the new aviation mechanics school for UMES out at the Salisbury-Wacomico Airport, right?
I was indeed. It was really nice to see that we have this educational facility I think it's going to serve our region very well. To me, one of the best things about it is that we won't have to import the talent from elsewhere to maintain aircraft at the Salisbury Airport. We'll be able to take people from this area, train them, give them a job, and they'll stay. They won't go elsewhere. And that's been, I think, one of the biggest problems we've had is that young people go across the bay to get educated, and all too often they don't come back and contribute to our local economy. And this will help.
Piedmont Airlines, they donated one of the airplanes to the school, right?
They did
and some
indeed.
engines.
Yes, they had a couple of Rolls-Royce engines, and they have it's an Embraer jet. They've replaced that particular model with a new model, but these students will be able to break that thing down to every last nut and bolt, and these engines too, that they can work on and rebuild it. And these are modern, contemporary technologies, and it'll really help them to learn their trade.
So, Joe, you were at the last county council meeting, and we were waiting for some updates from like the MOU with ICE, and instead we got some legislative work sessions about chickens and that sort of thing. I want to bring in Bob Taylor, and he used to be the county council's attorney, and I want to find out just his feelings on some of the hot topics that came up, particularly from someone with a law background. I know you do as well. But if you would, after we interview him, would you come back in, and I want to just follow up with you on some of the stuff he has to say?
Sure.
All right. So stay with us. When we come back, we're going to bring in Bob Taylor and talk about the last county council meeting. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Open Agenda. In the studio with me now is Mr. Bob Taylor from Salisbury.
Good morning, Captain.
And Mr. Mike Goldberg from Del Mar. Thank you, gentlemen, for both being here.
Yes, sir.
So, Bob, on Tuesday the 16th was the last county council meeting. I want to talk about some of the updates we received, some of the ones we didn't. Let's talk about the MOU with ICE.
Yeah, well, what we didn't receive was any further information from the county executive, or the sheriff for that matter, about where things stand with this purported MOU with ICE. I want to correct myself from our last episode on this when I assumed that the MOU was a done deal. And I might point out I was not alone. I'm actually in pretty good company. There's an article that was in the WBOC. Congressman Harris praises Wacomico County's new partnership with ICE. He also apparently assumed that it was a done deal. And that may be because of a press release that was released by the county executive a few days earlier. It's dated September 4. Wacomico County announces intent to move forward with ICE warrant service officer model. Doesn't specifically say there's a done deal, but when you look at the tense of the verbiage, it sounds awfully much like there is. And like I say, it's taken at least a couple of us by the hook.
And we've gone on the ICE website, and there is no application for MOU.
And that's right. I checked it this morning. It's still not listed as a done deal. They have a list of, I think it's over 1,000 now, different MOUs around the country. And there's also a second list of pending applications that have been filed. Wacomico County's not listed on either.
Okay.
Now, at the meeting you referred to on Tuesday, the county executive was present at a work session after they ended their business meeting. There was plenty of opportunity for the county council members, some of whom are agitated that she hasn't provided more information, but nobody asked any questions.
Well, I mean, they asked them, they talked about chickens.
Yes, chickens were a matter of some importance. I'll get to that, but just to kind of bring up to date on the MOU a little bit, the purported MOU, It is for what they call the Warrant Service Officer, WSO, part of the 287G.
It's one of the three options.
One of the three options. It's the lower in terms of activity by the Sheriff's Department. All they would do would be serve warrants on persons who are incarcerated in the jail.
Yeah.
Before they're released for whatever ground the release might be. It wouldn't involve anything out on the street. It wouldn't involve, as far as I can determine, and this is why I would like to get more information to run this to ground, it wouldn't involve much time or cost that I can see.
We saw Trish Melvin actually made a presentation where she talked about some of the reimbursement and how they calculate that overtime and the rate.
Patricia Melvin, District 7 in Wycomico County. I talked previously about the 287G program, and since then there's been some changes, both locally and at the national level. So I want to revise my statements and bring the information up to date. You know, it occurred to me that we're really crowdsourcing this information, doing our best. And anything that I am reporting here, you know, please tell me if you're finding something different. One thing I want to say, I've heard it said publicly that we have an MOU. I want to state that having an MOU is not the same thing as having a signed MOU. So I've not heard it said that we have a signed MOU, but possibly an MOU exists. So what I want to update you on is that initially, Wycomico County was considering the broader jail enforcement model and ultimately moved over to the warrant service officer model. The model that involved taking people off the street was never really considered for the 287, but ICE is still doing that. The WSO model is much narrower in scope than JEM. Officers only undergo 1 day of training, probably on site. Now, one big change is that, because I talked about how none of this is reimbursed federally, I think the day I said that, DHS came out with an announcement that they will do reimbursement. And what they say is that participating agencies will receive full coverage for the salary and benefits of trained officers, including up to 25% in overtime. So it sounds pretty good, but you have to keep in mind that, you know, our officers have a full-time job. And so in theory, you know, that's why they do specify overtime. So in theory, this work would be done on overtime. You know, sheriff's deputies, the reimbursement is only for ICE work, not for local law enforcement. Doesn't change how the officers are paid, but rather how the local agency is compensated by the federal government. Reimbursements paid annually. Localities will still be responsible for the jail, for the food, jail, housing. There is a separate program that covers that, SCAAP, but it's not been fully funded and only covers a fraction of the cost. On the back, I have calculations as to how much time would be covered with some theoretical examples. The first example is where the officer works an average of 8 hours a week. He would not be fully, well, the county would not be fully compensated for that full amount, but if the officer worked about 6 hours a week, the reimbursement would be full. So the break-even point is just under 7 hours a week of overtime. Thank you.
And at least according to her calculations, a sheriff's officer could work 7 hours of overtime and fit within that
Well, I mean,
reimbursement. But we really don't know.
Well, I mean, at least trying to figure it out logically, and I could be wrong, the warrants would come down from ICE to here, and then a sheriff's deputy would pick it up and go serve it in the jail.
Bob, since it is a federal warrant that would be served, would that not require that the sheriff's deputy is, for lack of a better term, certified by federal law enforcement to serve that warrant? So it wouldn't be any, as I understand it, it wouldn't be just any deputy, but somebody who
It
has
would only
been
be, yes,
certified
only
by
certain
the.
ones. There's as I understand it, and this is off the website of ICE, there's a day required of instruction. And that will be held, I'm pretty sure, at the ICE facility in Baltimore. They would have to go there and might have to spend a night. There'd be some cost. And they'd lose a day of their normal activity. But that would be it. And so as far as I can tell, it's pretty minimal in that regard.
Can you speculate why this has not moved forward? I mean, they've sort of announced that it is. Congressman Harris believed it had. What could possibly be holding this up?
I can offer thoughts. I'm not going to say assume. I'm just kind of speculating here at this point. All of the other counties in Maryland that have an MOU, it's with the sheriff's office, and in those counties, the sheriff runs the jail. There are 8 of them altogether. They're pretty much conservative. Several of them are Republican majority counties. And here, however, the sheriff does not run the jail. It's a county department. So I think there may be something there that could be holding this up.
Well, since the sheriff and the county executive seem to be on the same page on this, and you would think that they would be easily able to come to an agreement or an MOU between the sheriff's office and the executive's office to allow the use of the detention facility for this purpose. So it's not making any sense to me why that hasn't happened, because they're certainly not, by all appearances, on opposite polar ends of this issue. It seems that they both want it.
That's why I'd like to have more information, as would, I think, a lot of other people here in the county.
But the information we did get this past meeting was about some suggestions that the county executive proposed about chickens and regulating chickens, right?
Okay, we want to go back, shift to the chickens in the backyard.
Well, it's only a half an hour show, so
Okay.
yeah.
Well,
I mean, we could talk 30 minutes about ICE, or we can talk about other
The
stuff too.
the county executive has initiated this, and it was discussed at a work session on Tuesday. And I think it grows out of a couple of things that have happened. First, they've found a cockfighting ring here in the county. Apparently, she indicated this. I have no particulars about it. So, and then secondly, there was another incident where someone with a same type situation, just a few chickens, we're not talking about commercial broiler houses here, and they had gotten out and they were free-ranging along other neighbors' lots in a subdivision. So she wants to say, how can we address this? We need something. Sort of asking the council, it seemed, well, what do you want? What do you want to do? To me, well, there's a couple things. First of all, if you think there's a problem and you think you need legislation, why not propose some legislation?
That's not what this was.
No, this was just kind of a general chit-chat, almost. So one thing that was not mentioned during the discussion was the fact that there are already a fair amount of state laws. Some of them specifically address poultry. Some of them specifically address just animals in general. The criminal code, for example, of the Maryland State Code, provides for a whole range of offenses which are punishable by criminal involving animals, and chickens qualify as animals under this statute. So, for example, cockfighting, which is one of the things that has been discovered apparently, that's a crime.
So there are laws already in place.
And there's also general legislation under the criminal code about the condition and treatment of animals. Now, it's very general, and it just says, for instance, you have to provide adequate facilities for them, adequate nourishment. It just says proper. And if you'll recall, maybe 10 years ago, we had a situation here involving horses.
Yeah,
If you'll
at the
remember,
Pritchard Farm
number of, I don't know where it was exactly.
in Hebron. Yeah.
But there were a number of them, and apparently they were in very poor condition.
So one of the interesting things I found from the work session was the county executive actually even posed as a possibility of giving money out to low-income families so they could build enclosures, like grants and that sort of thing. Wouldn't this expand government and their reach? Wouldn't this make it a larger institution if we're starting to actually send our government to people's homes to talk about
Yeah,
chicken enclosures?
I don't want to get too much in the weeds because apparently this was in something that was handed out at the meeting,
Yes.
was not in the briefing book. And I don't really know if it's just so, here's an idea, well, let's talk about this. I don't know to the extent that the county executive was saying, let's do this.
I have it, and it was just interesting to me that from a conservative standpoint, this would actually increase the cost of the government and increase their reach into people's lives. I mean, I agree with you that there are already regulations of how to treat animals, how to treat wild animals. If you want to have even a mass-produced chicken farm, there's definitely a lot of regulations for that. But this just seems just like so much overreach.
Now, the problem of free-ranging chickens that get loose and go around the neighborhood, that could possibly be a nuisance matter. We have a nuisance statute on the books also. But I think the county executive was suggesting that there be a finite limit of the number of chickens that one could have in their backyard, let's say. We're not talking about commercial broiler raising here, so let's not mix it up. And it would apparently be tied to the size of the lot.
To me, it's not so much the number of chickens, but if they're free ranging, are they creating a public nuisance? Some time ago, a couple of my neighbors' chickens got into my yard. They tore up some landscaping.
Chickens.
So we also had some talk about signage in the right-of-ways.
Yeah, that was another thing. Again, she brought it up. And again, I think it's a legitimate topic. I'm not criticizing the county executive for bringing it up because as you drive around, and there's some photos that are actually in the briefing book about this, you'll see corners, particularly street intersections, where there are massive signs for everything under the sun, karate, house, I buy houses type thing with phone numbers, off times for subdivisions where there are homes for sale, Ryan Homes and whatnot. And as far as I'm concerned, that should be just illegal, and we shouldn't have that.
All right, and I want to ask you about an update on the Mentis lawsuit on Lot 10. There was a ruling to not give the temporary injunction for that, but that does not mean that the case was dismissed, correct?
I think it's important to mention this because there was, again, a news report that was very misleading. It suggested that the city, this is a city now, it's a city suit, cannot get an injunction regarding the parking lot 10. That's the parking lot where the flea market used to be held.
Yes.
It's about not quite 3 acres, I think, altogether. And under the land disposition agreement, the contract on which the city sold it for, I think, about $25,000 an acre, it provided that the city could continue to use it for parking, public parking, until the new owner, developer, was ready to do something to build on it. The proposal was to do a hotel convention center. Well, what happened was, since then, a couple of years ago that the sale occurred, the state has provided a grant of, I think it's $4 million, towards this project, this proposed project. The mayor, Randy Taylor, no relation, thinks that that is supposed to be for, let's call it, public infrastructure, not for private infrastructure for the project itself. And there's an ongoing, and has been an ongoing dispute between him, the city, that is, the mayor, and the developer, a fellow named Nick Simpson, somebody may know.
From Mentis Capital.
Yeah, the same one that did the Ross, or was involved in it. And in May, Simpson says, well, if you're not going to give me the money, then I'm just going to close it to the city. He then has subsequently negotiated a deal with the county executive for the county to pay him for parking privileges for county personnel, whereas previously they had been paying the city for that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where all that stands. The city then filed a lawsuit, a month and a half ago, I think, to enjoin that. And under injunction litigation, you can ask for what's called a temporary restraining order to essentially immediately stop what it is you're trying to enjoin. Now, the hearing on last Friday was just about that, just about the temporary restraining order.
Yes.
And what it turned on was one of the factors that you have to show to get a TRO is that if you don't get it, what happens in between the time that it's denied and the time that the actual injunction is granted, assuming it's granted, that there will be some harm that can't be remedied, that be irreparable. The judge felt that, and the developer's attorney argued this, that, well, it's just loss of money. It's that money that was formerly coming to the city to pay for parking spaces that is now going to the developer. And that can be cured by just a civil lawsuit.
Yeah, later on.
Later on, yeah. So it wasn't irreparable in the judge's opinion.
So the whole case has not been dismissed. It's
Not at
just
all.
that
Not at
temporary
all.
restraining order.
And I understand a hearing is going to be set fairly soon, probably the next couple or 3 months, for the main injunction.
And finally, I want to talk about the county executive, and it came up at the county council meeting last Tuesday. She still has a Trump sign in her window, and the city of Salisbury's complained about it. It sits out over Division Street onto Route 50, Business 50. It's in her office, correct?
I have it on. I haven't seen it personally, but
Yeah,
I have.
I have.
Several usually reliable sources tells me that it's still there, and it says Trump, and I think there's something down below that says "Make America Great Again" or words to something like that. And my understanding is from sources that she's saying, well, I don't really have it posted in my window to display it to the public. It's just a political memorabilia that I have, and I just have it sitting on my windowsill.
Yeah, facing
next
out
to
to
the
be
window.
seen from the street, not to be seen from the
Well, it
interior
might
of
be
her
a
office.
might be a two-sided sign.
It might
I
be.
mean, there are
But I wonder if she kept one of the signs that did not have an authority line from the 2024 election. So
I don't know.
just for memorabilia purposes. So.
And again, something like this came up a few years ago. It's probably about 15 years ago now, under our first county executive, where someone in his office was using county facilities to campaign for him. It was a very minor type of campaigning, but we looked into that, and that is actually prohibited by state law. Now, whether putting a memorabilia sign in your window is using county assets for political purposes, that might be a stretch. I don't know. But it seems to me that at the very least, it's in very, very bad taste and judgment.
Look, in the 2024 election, she was, the county executive was using the county's vehicle, an unmarked county vehicle, to deliver her campaign signs to election sites. So
I
there's a
think
little
that-
bit of a
Yeah,
history
I think
here
that
with
could
this
be
type of
That
behavior.
could be over the line.
Yeah.
That could be,
And I mean,
you know.
we had the pictures and the
We
video
got
of
the
that.
photographic evidence of it, no question.
Thanks for following us up with all of this information. And if we'd like to have you back out to give us an update when we hear more about the Mentis lawsuit and the MOU with ICE.
As they say, tomorrow is another day.
Yeah. Well, stay with us when we come back. We're going to bring in Joe Scafino, and we're going to find out just what he thinks about some of these subjects. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Open Agenda. In the studio with me now is Joe Scafino from Salisbury. Thanks for coming back. Mr. Mike Goldberg, thanks for sticking around.
Sure, I couldn't find the escape hatch.
Well, you've tried every week, and we've had it locked every time. So, Bob had a lot of updates, and unfortunately for a lot of those topics, there's not much more information, or there's incomplete information, right? Let's talk about the MOU with ICE. At the last county council meeting, we still had some more folks show up and speak out against it. There are some folks like Mike and I who actually do agree with it to some degree, but we just don't have any answers, Joe.
Well, I've been an outspoken opponent of ICE coming into the county for their immigration sweeps. And because we don't have information, we don't know the extent of what they're planning. I did an editorial opinion that has been recently published, and I closed it by saying, the model that's been proposed, this warrant service, to serve arrest warrants on people with criminal warrants, I absolutely support that. And I think most people support that. I think the biggest fear is, we see on TikTok, on Instagram, on the evening news, we see people just snatched off the street by masked agents, unidentified, stuffed into cars.
But that's not what's happening here. And I think there's been a lot of misinformation out there. The Warrant Service Officer Program, from my understanding, is limited to warrants being served to an illegal immigrant who has already been incarcerated, and there are federal charges pending.
But don't you want the people who are actually signing this MOU to come and say exactly that?
Well, of course.
Because that's, look, if someone is against it, to some degree, that's exactly, you want to be able to give them the information to say, hey, if these are the boundaries, this is the guardrails, are you okay? Can you be okay with this? There has to be compromise at some point.
But this is the recurring theme, the lack of transparency coming out of the executive branch of our government. It has not been discussed in public. The only public forum available for open discussion is the county council at county council meetings.
They don't know anything.
They not only have they not been informed, but they also have no authority. It doesn't mean that that the sheriff and the executive cannot attend a meeting and discuss these issues. Thus far, neither has opted to do so.
But what we did get was this to talk about chickens, and Mike, I want to ask you the talk about possibly funding other folks getting their chickens penned in. Is this something that you think our county executive should even be worrying about?
No, absolutely not. And you just can't have government involved in funding things in the private sector like that. This is not a legitimate function of government. Our government's supposed to be limited. Protect our shores, deliver our mail, and stay the heck out of our business. That's just how I feel.
Do you feel like, prior to going into the whole landfill debacle, and, it was going to close on Saturdays and close on Tuesdays, it seemed like we had a lot of smoke screen. Do you feel like talking about chickens is like somehow a diversion from the bigger issues?
I think there are some far more serious issues facing this county. Chickens has got to be pretty close to the bottom of the list, in my opinion.
It's not on the first page. Let's go there.
It certainly isn't.
What about the Trump sign in the executive's window? What's your opinion on that?
Absolutely not permissible, in my opinion. It's government property, and everything I've ever read, you can't use government property, government facilities for campaign purposes. It's crystal clear.
I couldn't agree with you more. Look, I voted for Trump, but I think that is improper to have that sign posted for all to see.
What really surprises me, the county executive, she's not a dumb person. She's
actually very intelligent.
She's pretty intelligent. So she's picking fights like putting a campaign sign that she knows isn't right. She's not putting a decal on a car that every other municipality, county in the country identifies. So I don't understand why she's picking dumb fights like this.
Especially someone who 48% of the people last November actually voted to just remove her office completely.
Yeah.
And she downplays that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And look, you either win or you lose, and we did not win question A. But it's not like she won it by a landslide here.
Correct.
And having any political sign is just further division. So when you start to parcel up a piece of a piece of a piece, you only end up representing such a small sliver. And then we saw that with Councilman Wynn's comments that there's only a very small sliver that is actually represented by some of these folks in office. And when once you're elected, you represent everybody.
Exactly.
The executive just does not seem to believe that she is subject to the same laws and ordinances and standards of conduct that the rest of us are.
And
this I find deeply concerning.
That's the appearance.
Well, thank you both. I appreciate your diligence on this, and I hope to see you at the next council meeting, right?
We will.
Well, thanks for watching this episode of Open Agenda. We'll be back later this week with another new episode.
praise the Lord and pass the chicken.